Hey, this is Emily Soderback of Scarecrow Video's Viva Physical Media.
Hi, this is Matt Lynch, co-host of Viva. The Projection Booth podcast is sponsored by Scarecrow.
Try out Scarecrow Video's rent-by-mail service. Choose from over 155,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs, all delivered directly to your door.
Visit scarecrowvideo.org today.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining once again is Mr. Spencer Parsons.
Hello.
Also back in the booth is Mr. Joe Odber.
Hello, how's it going?
We are kicking off a month discussing Westerns with a look at Lucio Fulci's Massacre Time, also known as Le Cult Cantarano Le Morte e Fu Tiempo de Massacre, as in the cult sings death, Massacre Time. Also known as The Brute and the Beast, the film stars Franco Nero, hot off of Django, as Tom Corbett. He's a prospector who gets summoned to come home. The mystery is who summoned him. Was it his drunk brother Jeff, played by George Hilton? Was it his surrogate mother, Mercedes? Was it the patriarch of the Carradine family? Or how about the man whose name is on every building in town in Laramie, Mr. Scott? Laramie is besieged by Mr. Scott and his men, including Scott's son, Junior, played by Nino Castelnuovo, a dandy in a white suit who loves to use a whip. And oh boy, is he fun. We will be spoiling Massacre Time's mystery and everything else about the film as we discuss it. So if you don't want anything ruined, turn off the podcast and come back after you've seen it. You will not be sorry. So, Joe, when was the first time you saw Massacre Time, and what did you think?
I saw it for the first time the last couple of weeks, just for this show. The only Fulci Western I've seen before is For the Apocalypse, and that's one I really like. That's got Thomas Millian as well as a really particularly good baddie in that one, and Fabio Testi, I think, in that as well, isn't he? So, yeah, first time watch for me. I'm a big Fulci fan, and the more films of his I watch, the more I enjoy. The more you get to appreciate his shortcomings as well as what he's excellent at. And I think both are really in evidence here. So great one to watch. Very interesting.
And Spencer, how about yourself?
This is my first time watching, and first Fulci Western. I'm a big fan of the horror, but had not seen any of the Westerns before. And I really love this movie. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, this was a first-time watch for me as well. It was one of those where I don't even know how it came on my radar. I might have been doing a search as far as the best spaghetti Westerns, just wanted to get back and do some more Western talk, and I was not disappointed by this movie whatsoever. I can't say that I've seen a ton of Fulci films. I'm pretty sure I've seen Zombie, and I don't know what others of his I've seen. Just for some reason, I just always associate him with being very trashy, even though I don't know if he is necessarily.
I think that's not entirely unfair.
This is part of what we love about Mr. Fulci. The trashiness it's a feature, not a bug.
I don't find this film to be very trashy at all. I love it.
This one's not very trashy. No,
and I love the violence. Apparently it was controversial at the time because of the violence, but man, I'm here for it. From the very beginning, where you have this kind of most dangerous game type of thing where they release a peasant and have him torn apart by dogs. Okay, yeah, I'm here for it. So immediately we're getting some class struggle here, and I love it. And we also get introduced to Nino Castelnuovo as Junior, and I love his performance and this kind of creepy grin he's got, the way he cocks his head throughout most of it. He kind of has his eyes hooded, and he just has this creep factor to him 1,000 times.
You can tell why they started first scene with this guy rather than any of the other protagonists of this film.
He really overshadows the person who I guess is supposed to also be the villain, which is his father, but he is so much more in charge of everything than his own dad.
Well, so one of the things about this as a shift to horror is that he's at minimum extremely monstrous, if not totally a monster. I'm not the biggest fan of Westerns, to be honest. It takes a little bit of work or hearing that it's a Fulci to get me to watch a Western. But I will say that my tastes run toward the Westerns that start to include horror, because one of the things that bothers me about a lot of Westerns is the sort of narrative of righteous violence, which I just don't believe in, period. I think it's a pernicious kind of mythology, and that has been very culturally harmful in the United States. So it's really might seem strange for me to say, oh, I'm on board with this movie where it's not so much about good and evil, it's more about bad and the badder. Obviously, there are conditions that have brought Franco Nero and George Hilton to commit the violence that they do, but they're really sadistic, especially George Hilton, and very quick to just knock people off in a way that is not righteous violence. It is the violence of the world that they inhabit. And the villain of this piece being so extreme and yet also quite conventionally good looking. I was not surprised to find out that his previous roles are nice guys, but he makes this incredible set of choices about his physicality, being introduced almost with his eyes closed, like he's passing out or something, as he's inflicting this violence on another person. And so it becomes, right out of the gate, we are introduced to a monster. And our heroes, or at least protagonists, they're here to get the monster by the end. And even though the plot hasn't totally kicked in, visually, this is totally clear. The moment that Franco Nero, as Tom, arrives, he's here to get the monster. And this is where the whole death drive of the movie is going.
You don't really need a plot in this movie once that introduction comes in. The plot is this guy has to die. One of the problems I have with the film, and I did love the film, is the plot sometimes is hard to follow. There's bits I still don't understand, and it needn't be a complicated plot, but that's part of Fulci, as you'll know, Spencer. He does not mind having a little hiccups in the plot here and then. That is not what he's concentrating on.
I think his approach to plot is actually quite similar to his approach to space, which is like, in a lot of these sequences, the attention to space is just beautiful and totally clear and precise. And especially in this one, because this is a more expensive movie than a lot of the horrors that I really love. And it's interesting to see him working with a larger budget because he's really able to get things exactly right. But one of the things about Fulci is like the moment that he does not care about continuity of space anymore, you get an absurdity of spaces just jammed together, and that often will create a momentary confusion. It's a confusion actually that I really like, like somebody is looking in a direction and then we cut to another shot as if they're seeing that. And then it becomes clear that they couldn't possibly be seeing what we're seeing in the shot in reverse. But the way that Fulci orchestrates this, it's at once problematic on a basic cinematic narration level. And then also at the same time, it's creating a kind of zone for disjuncture and surprise. And I don't even know, it's simply his style. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about, is this intentional? Or is this a method that he was really devoted to? I don't know about that, and I don't care. I really care about the effect. So there are parts of this that you can tell are beautifully intentional if you want to go that kind of auteurist orchestration route. And then there are other parts where, as you say, his faults come in, but those faults are really interesting and are genuinely part of the excitement of a Fulci movie.
It's interesting you're talking about looking and the discontinuity of it, because so much of this film is about looking. The first time we see Nero's character being introduced, and I love how they follow the blood in the water going down, all that, while we've got that amazing theme song going, and then we follow the water down to the river where Nero's character is panning for gold, Tom Corbett. As he's there looking at this piece of gold, the camera moves in and you see this guy standing behind him and looking out between two boulders, and you're just like, okay, is he about to get robbed? Is he about to get murdered? We don't know what this is. And then finally this guy shows up and Franco throws some blows, but then, oh, it's this guy who used to work at the house where I lived when I was growing up, gives him this note like, hey, Carradine wants to see you. And that becomes like it's a mystery plot. I mentioned that at the beginning. Nero is a private eye through a lot of this. It's the whole thing of coming back home, seeing the house that he grew up in, this manor estate thing, just overrun. Pigs coming out of the front door, and there's a guy chasing them out, and it's all decrepit. He gets accosted while he's on that front property, and it's just, don't you know the rules? This is Mr. Scott's. I don't even know who Mr. Scott is. So you have to go through and you are finding out with Nero what's happening. And there's a big reveal later on in the movie, which is very much like a mystery plot. So I love this whole idea of the looking. The other thing real quick I want to say is I love when this guy that's delivering the message, when Nero's, I'll go with you or come with me kind of thing. The guy's like, no way. And he runs away. It looks like Napoleon Dynamite, looks like the way that John Heder runs in that role, and he just runs behind a little hill and he disappears. And I know he's just still sitting there, but it's okay, he's out of sight now, out of mind of this picture. And that made me laugh so hard I had to rewind it 3 times to watch it.
One of the things that I was reminded of, and this is a real sublime to the ridiculous kind of association, was Hal Needham's The Villain, which is an extremely strange attempt to join together Looney Tunes with the Western in live action. And I like Hal Needham movies, but he's an extremely lazy director. And in order to bring together Looney Tunes with Westerns, you need more rigor to pull it off. So it's a very strange movie. But the reason why I made that association is so much of the violence here, it's really interesting. It's at once very extreme and cruel and also cartoonish frequently. We have people thrown through the air in ridiculous ways. We have shots that will, cause people to fly across the screen. And we have moments like this of running away. Like you mentioned, it's kind of like Napoleon Dynamite or something. The cruelty plus the cartoonish quality create a really intense absurdity to the violence that can be funny in one moment and then really nasty in another. And the big set piece of the movie, which frankly should be an absolute classic. I'm going to start teaching this sequence in my classes. To me, it's up there with like the Psycho shower scene or the Odessa step sequence as like just intense, pure cinema. The big sequence in the middle where we get into the bullwhip violence that is just so beautifully staged, shot to shot and reaction to reaction, and the way that all the crowd is gathered around and everything, this afternoon for a bunch of rich people who end up watching somebody get almost whipped to death. And it includes both Looney Tunes moments and the most sadistic violence in the entire movie. And the way that it comes together, the way that it's choreographed, framed, and edited is so masterful. Really, like probably my favorite sequence in any Fulci movie that I've seen before. And I love the horror films so much. House by the Cemetery, like, let me watch it again. But this is really at this whole other level where I start to go, oh, right. Yeah, Fulci, for whatever the weird faults, whatever the strange preoccupations that he has that can make the movies odd and messed up and plotless, at the same time, there's a total mastery of cinema that comes out in the films where who cares about if it all adds up when this is something that's delivered to us. And I'll throw out that I am obsessed with Psycho. And one of the things that obsesses me about that's a movie that does not add up. And we treat it as if it does. And Hitchcock is one of the all-time great auteurs, et cetera, et cetera. But there's so much that's absurd and weird and strange disjunctures in that movie. But we've normalized Hitchcock into being the big auteur. And Fulci, I think, is actually, with a sequence like this, right up there.
What struck me is it's the earliest Fulci film I've seen, and I think it's probably the earliest most people, the vast majority of people have seen. Before this, it's all comedies and musicals, like weird jukebox musicals. This is his first, I don't want to say adult film, is that a bit pushing it a bit, but it's really the first film that's got violence in it. And he hits the ground running with that. He's had comedy before, but this is the first one that has his later preoccupations. And you mentioned the comedy, the kind of Looney Tunes comedy, that there's a barroom fight in the middle, which really reminded me of Terence Hill, Bud Spencer movies almost. But it's quite jarring, just that juxtaposition with the comedy and just the nastiness of some of the film.
And I think a lot of the good things about this movie that are coming through are from the screenplay, from Fernando Di Leo's screenplay. And it's funny how many times we've talked about Di Leo on this show. We did The Italian Connection forever ago. We just did Blood and Diamonds, I think, last year, the year before. And then, of course, gave name to a particular show that I love called Caliber 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was the first film we reviewed on the podcast, Caliber 9 and Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's a director I love and a screenwriter I love as well, because he started doing A Few Dollars More and Fistful of Dollars as well, he co-wrote. Ended up doing quite a few spaghetti westerns, Navajo Joe as well, I think he did. But yeah, he really made his name in the Poliziotteschi in the 70s, both as a writer and as a director. Some amazing films, right up to the 80s actually. I don't know if you've seen Contra Killers with Henry Silva, which is crazy, but really worth watching. That was delayed for ages coming out. But he did the screenplay for Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man by Ruggero Deodato
That's a great one, too.
in the 70s as well, which is another cracker. But very good, very clever screenwriter as well. And you're right, the class stuff in this does separate it from maybe a traditional Hollywood Western.
We've seen cattle barons, we've seen the rich and the way that they run the whole town type of thing. I guess maybe all the Johnsons of Blazing Saddles might have something to do with, like the Scots. There's Johnson on every business, but here it's just one person rather than all of the people having the same last name. But yeah, we've seen this type of thing before, but not this way necessarily. And I really appreciate just how run down everything is. The whole idea of him coming home and finding his brother just is now a complete drunk. And I have to say, I don't know if I have seen George Hilton in movies before. This might be my first time really seeing him, or he might have just played smaller bits and things that I don't remember. But my God, I think I'm now a George Hilton fan. He is in this movie. Wow.
No, he's like Dean Martin in Rio Bravo, except he shoots even better when he's drunk.
Oh boy, yeah, that's for sure.
He's the star of one of my favourite spaghetti western, which is one of the Sartana films. He came into the role late just for one film. I think it's Sartana Is Here, Trade Your Gun for a Coffin. They've all got great names. But that really takes the comedy quite far. It's a lot of gunplay. It's very like For a Few Dollars More, with a lot of the tricks and the gunplay, etc. Very fun western, that one.
So this fits into the sadistic world of the film, but versus a lot of other westerns where you'll have a rich bad guy, or you'll have, later in the case of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, a corporation. This is really interesting in the way that it stages this major violent set piece at this afternoon party for the rich at Scott's mansion, because it really ends up playing all of these rich people as completely depraved. The way that women with parasols gather around to watch this whipping, and no one seems to have any concern about what they're watching. This is setting aside wealthy people as a depraved class, and makes a lot of sense of, yeah, Scott's name is all over everything in town, but it's all run down and it's all kind of shitty. And I don't know about you, but I see certain kinds of associations with current events in the way that this works out. And yeah, that scene in particular, while I don't know that it's like a full Marxist class analysis, I do think that there is something really psychologically and mythically interesting about going to the place of the wealthy, and they are totally depraved. We've seen it in some other films, but it's actually a surprising move in this movie.
It's supposed to be set in, I think, New Mexico, but it definitely feels more like the old antebellum South. You've mentioned the obvious legacy it's got with Django Unchained as well, which we'll talk about later, I think. But yeah, it felt quite European to me. This is a time when a lot of Italians, and it's made for an Italian as well as an American and international audience, lots of Italians were moving from the South as well because of things like the mafia. This was a big thing. There was no money down there. The mafia run everything. They had to go north to Milan, Rome, Turin. And if people went back, they found their towns were dead and local thugs were just running the show. It felt very Italian to me, that aspect of it.
I can pick up on what you're throwing down there, Spencer, as far as putting your name on everything, this, whether it's a shithole city or not. Yeah, like what you're saying about the mafia stuff, because of especially the family that is trying to leave town. And this is great and everything, but we just cannot make any money. Basically, and I don't think they say it this way, but basically you're taxing us to death because you know that this whole town runs on some sort of extortion scheme, right? And it's, yeah, because you don't really see, like I mentioned, oh yeah, we've seen cattle barons. There's no cattle. I don't know why he is able to have that. Plus the whole trip to his compound it's like going through like stages of hell kind of thing, where it's like, okay, well, there's these bad guys you're going to have to take care of. These other bad guys we're going to have you take care of. And then the whole thing of the brother of Jeff, the George Hilton character, he does not want to join his brother whatsoever. He does not want to take part in this whole thing. Like, he's already done with the Scots. He doesn't want anything to do with this whole mess. But Tom is investigating, trying to find answers and all this. Ironically enough, a lot of these answers have to do with the past, with the family and what happened with that. But he's almost like this guardian angel of Tom, trying to go to the Scott place. And he's there helping pick off all of these guys. And then once Nero gets close enough, Tom gets close enough, he's like, okay, I'll see you later. I don't want anything else to do with the rest of this. Here you go. You're at the gates of hell, basically. Go inside and I'll see you later, hopefully.
Yeah. And he says, make sure you tell him that it wasn't me that shot all these men.
Yeah, I'll do this for you, but you have to take the blame, which I've never heard in a spaghetti Western ever. Nobody cares about who murders who. But this time, it's very important. I'm not the one. I didn't pull this trigger.
I love it. And I love the way that, again, they just go in and they're going to kill all these dudes. No question. Not tricking, not leaving them wounded. Just going to kill them all. And then that's clearly the journey that we're on to the end of the film, is our heroes are going to go into the bad place and they're going to kill everybody.
And even this thing with the family leaving, the way that he makes them stay is you don't have any dead that are buried here. So what does the son do? What does Junior do? He kills somebody. Just cold-blooded right there in the middle of the street. Now you have a reason to stay. And meanwhile, you've got, for me, one of the most interesting characters, which is the Chinese guy who seems to have all the jobs in town.
Every job, yeah.
He's the blacksmith. He's the undertaker. He plays piano in the bar. Always looking for money.
I remember seeing this character before, and it might be in a spaghetti and Western, that this is a stock character. It's the same guy every time. He's the one that does all the work in town. A very cynical, very spaghetti Western aspect to this, definitely.
What's interesting, too, that he's marked as an outsider because he's Asian. Probably Chinese, probably came in with the railroad, if you're going to give this character a backstory. In my version, so I watched this, it was so strange. I watched this in an Italian dub. I have never seen a spaghetti Western just dubbed in Italian. I know that there are English dubs of this out there, but yeah, him quoting Confucius and stuff just in Italian just felt very strange to me while he's doing that, and always hand out looking for money, even if it comes to, hey, I helped protect you guys in that big barroom fight because I was using my pipe as a blow dart.
Exactly. And then he wants money and he's saving up for his old age.
I love that gag too, where he ducks back behind a corner and comes out and he's wearing that raggedy tuxedo because now he's the Undertaker.
Not a sensitively drawn character, but really fun. And the movie kind of loves him.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him have a kind of payoff at the end of the film, but
yeah,
wasn't to happen.
The new mayor of the town.
I watched the English dub of this. I think the original English dub, and it's not great, to be honest. And in fact, I think when AIP bought it for American release, they redubbed it, which I haven't seen. I'd love to see if that one's any better. But so there's three different dubs of this. But like all Italian movies of this and later generations, all the dialogue is put in afterwards. I think it just makes it cheaper just to film it, without dialogue. Put that in afterwards. Very odd to hear dubbed by somebody, because quite soon into his career, he always dubbed himself in English, even though his English is not always that great. But it's usually always Franco Nero's voice you hear.
No, I was wondering if it was Nero going to be dubbing himself, so that's interesting that he didn't do that for this movie.
Yeah, I can't remember which one he started off doing that. It may have been Street Law, the Enzo Castellari film. Yeah.
The sound in this movie is really quite good. Really atmospheric, and the music is aggressive. And I love how aggressive it is, because it's like, again, sort of back to the very simple mythic qualities of our rather ramshackle plot. The music is there to like continually put you into the right kind of space for understanding the motivations and the next move of the characters, even and especially at some of the points where things are not fully coming together. The music will punch in and punch through. And I really appreciate that. I mean, if this is a thing, there are a lot of conventions about use of music and in cinema, and especially since I teach in a film school and I'm in a film school environment, there's a lot of a kind of unsubtle emphasis on subtlety with regard to music, how much you really should have and how much is like leading the audience and all this kind of stuff. And that is obviously an issue with certain kinds of stories, but this is the kind of story where it is really right for the storytelling and it's really satisfying for the music to come in and like dominate so much. And it makes me want to see movies that do that now. We have a lot of movies with wall-to-wall music, and especially I'm very tired of horror music for just being like very scary the whole time. I feel like Count Floyd is like running the music session for so many horror films. So we do have a tradition of this right now of being pretty pushy, but this is pushy in a really exciting and epic and operatic way that I really appreciated and that I hope to see. I want there to be this Italian Western influence on contemporary cinema.
Well, there kind of is, isn't there, via Quentin Tarantino?
There is, yeah.
Took a lot of the visuals and takes the songs whenever he possibly can. I'm surprised he didn't use "I'll Come Back Home Someday" for Django Unchained or something.
That's absolutely true with Tarantino, but at the same time, he's still like, I'll put it this way, he's more of an aesthete than Fulci. And so the choices of how to use the music have quite often more of a meta quality, especially all the music cues taken from other movies in like the Kill Bill films. There's a commentary that's from outside of the movie at the same time, which of course, this is what that's in his dialogue, that's in his whole métier. But so Tarantino will take this sort of technique, but the way that it goes is not like this kind of pure and direct connection with story and character that I think Fulci.
Yeah, there's no irony in this, really. There's no distance. Yeah, this is just, I'm trying to immediately connect with the audience and make it easier for them to understand. Maybe they've been talking to your mate in the cinema, but boom, music comes in. This is a bit you have to pay attention to.
I'm a fan of irony. Just want to throw down that this non-ironic approach is also something I want to hear more of.
It's not a composer I know, really. Lalo Gori, but it's not Morricone, obviously. He made a lot of the spaghetti westerns just so distinctive as well.
I heard a lot of shit about the soundtrack. There's nothing wrong with this. And there are moments in the opening song, which apparently Fulci wrote the lyrics for, which is great. He was a songwriter as well as all the other things that he did. Song has some big heights to it. It really pushes hard. It doesn't have the operatic chorus that somebody like a Morricone would use, but I love the theme, and I love how the theme just keeps coming back in different ways throughout the rest of this movie. And there are times where, speaking of the atmospherics, there's no music. It's just more there for theme and therefore just atmosphere of the different chords being played. And I also appreciate just how important music is to this film. And we see so much diegetic music in this. We've got the little kid playing the harmonica in the street, and it always makes me laugh when you hear an instrument and then you cut to the person that's playing it. Like when Chow Yun-fat opens the door in The Killer and he's got the harmonica in his mouth. But you've got that. You've got, I mentioned the Chinese guy who is playing piano in the bar. And then you have that incredible organ scene. Wow, that is wild. So that is Junior playing the organ. And again, he's got his head cocked, that kind of weird way that he cocks his head and looks sideways at everything.
It's like Richard III, isn't it? Almost.
Oh, yeah. And the way that he interacts with his dad and the way that he's, okay, yeah, let's finish this up together, and almost forces his dad to play a duet with him.
It's very odd. Yeah.
It's so incestuous, and we definitely need to talk about that.
One of the things that this aggressive quality the music does as well is that when it goes out, I hear every bird. It's not a very thick sound design. It's usually only a track or two of atmospherics, but my attention is drawn to, just by juxtaposition, to the sounds of the world. And then I don't know if you guys notice this, and it's not that the punching noises are so different in this movie from in other spaghetti westerns, but the punches have this like very high pitch that then matches, to my ear, quite a bit with the bullwhip sound. There's a continuity to the fists and the bullwhip that I find interesting, because when they're punching each other, these are very high-pitched, high-frequency sounds that don't quite land as real and heavy, and that maybe also contribute to the slightly cartoonish quality of a lot of the violence. But then when the bullwhip has a similar kind of high pitch to it, there's a sort of unity within this violence that I find really interesting in the sound design.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just the same sound effect that you used.
Might have been, yeah.
Well, these gun sound effects are definitely from more of the Italian catalog. I had heard that Leone didn't really care for hearing the same sound effects as all the American Westerns, so he had new ones created. And I don't know, this is close to some of his stuff, and these gunshots sound so similar to some of the ones I've heard in other spaghetti westerns.
That stuff might have all gone into a sound library for, yeah, you get the new sound effects from Leone, and then everybody uses them after that. It's, even in the United States, it's actually weird and remarkable when a director like Scorsese will make entirely new sound effects for Raging Bull and then destroy them afterwards so that nobody else can use them.
I was talking with the sound editor recently, and I was just like, if you could remove one sound from all sound effect libraries, what would it be? And he's just like, I'm tired of the Wilhelm. I'm done with it. Okay, yeah. What do you guys think of the Mexican guy who seems to be following around Tom and is a protector for him? And that was one area where I was a little confused at first. I think I might have it figured out, but what did you think of that?
I got the impression there was a bit of plot cut out of this bit, because it looks like he is working directly for Mr. Scott rather than Junior. So he's got a slightly different agenda than Junior does, Junior and his thugs as well. But it's never really made clear. And there's a very odd scene near the end where he is the one that's crucified, right? But we have no idea why, really. We have to just infer that.
My inference was ultimately, yeah, because it big plot reveal here that Tom is actually one of Scott's sons. That is a late breaking reveal, and so that to me made sense of this character working directly for Scott, but also being a little bit watchful and protective, and then getting crucified because we're not going to necessarily protect this kid anymore.
I think that's it, but he doesn't really do all that much except stand in the background, look threatening, and everyone moves out, which I do kind of like. That's always I do like that character in these films.
Well, it's nice that we have another person of color in this movie. This feels like more of a Western town, because not only do we have now the Asian character, this kind of Latino gentleman, but there's even a black guy in the background a few times where it's like, okay, this is nice. And they don't necessarily make a big deal of, oh, that Mexican guy, he's not to be trusted or anything. But also, like you said, he gets crucified at the end. And I know Fulci's a fan of crucifixion scenes as well. I always found that a little too Roman myself.
Also, other background characters, there's that friend, maybe servant.
Boy, or catamite. Yeah.
Maybe lover of Junior's who's in the background. And definitely there are certain things about Junior, like from the word go, they're maybe a little queer coded for a villain, not uncommon at this particular period. But then you've got this watchful young blonde guy who helps him out at a few places, who's always there for a reaction shot of really enjoying the sadism, really wanting to see Junior mete out some violence on others. So the attention across the board to background characters who have no lines, but give so much texture and meaning to the world. Is not that Fulci's anything like the only one doing this, but really exciting to see. And right now, in the way that American films are getting made, there's just, I know from experience that there's so much focus on a budget that if a character doesn't speak, you're only getting an extra and you don't have background characters who enrich the world that much. Unless you're a really big deal auteur director, everybody else has to just have a main cast that seems to grow smaller and smaller. And then you have extras who fill out the background and might be dressed in interesting ways. But this was another one of those reminders of a past time in cinema where we can really fill out a world with people who don't have to have arcs. They don't have to have even lines of dialogue, but they are people worthy of our attention that make the story richer and reflect on other characters and create more sense of characterization. Even when, for instance, the Latino or native guy that we were talking about earlier, he doesn't have a lot of lines, yet has this big presence. And we don't even get explanations within the plot, but that presence makes us pay attention to what's going on and fill out explanations for ourselves, which I like.
One character I was just reminded of there is, certainly in the English dub, she's called Mercedes, which I'm not sure. How do you Americans pronounce it? Is it Mercedes-Benz?
I would say Mercedes.
That's what I thought, yeah. Anyway, they pronounce her name Mercedes, who again, I'm not sure if she is native or American or Latino, but she is she the old wet nurse of Jeff and Tom or something?
What it feels like, yeah, or like the servant lady, but yeah, it definitely feels like she raised those two from childhood, and it's really only once she gets murdered, spoilers, that Jeff actually takes things seriously and says, okay.
Which is why I think he does. I think it doesn't say this, but I think his whole reason of not wanting to get involved, of not wanting to go against the Scots, is to protect her. I think that makes more sense, yeah. Because after that happens, that's it. All guns are blazing after that.
And that is such a gnarly scene, too. The way that she dies is really fast and nasty and upsetting. We go from, you got to get out of town, to she steps in front of the window and instantly gets shot.
And windows are a big deal in this movie. I really love the shot of Nero when he ties up his horse and it's all from inside of a window. And that's when he first meets the Chinese guy, is when he comes around and goes into the Chinese guy's place. And I'm just like, well, that's a really nice use of outside and inside, because normally it's just like, all right, this is a set and this is the real world and never the twain shall meet. But it really feels like everything is integrated here. It feels very much more shot on location, which helps add to the verisimilitude.
But it doesn't feel flat at all, the direction of this. And in our show, we recently did Stagecoach. Seeing all this, all these windows and the framing, and the really careful framing, actually, it really reminded me of John Ford. This definitely feels very Western compared to, the Leone films, or even Django, which is the one that's, I think, quite a big influence on this, although a very close influence, so it's always hard to tell, because it only came out, 6 months before this.
Well, I'm curious, too, because when you mentioned Stagecoach and John Carradine was famously in there, and you've got the Carradine character, the character named Carradine here. That whole scene is just so strange for me, because like we said, Carradine is the one who allegedly wrote that note to come over here, Tom, we need you, even though Tom was told never come back to the town again. So he comes in, meets with Carradine for 10 seconds, if that, and then it's like we have another drive-by shooting with these two guys on horseback, just literally bang, 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 and murders Carradine, murders there's the titular massacre time, right? It's just all of his two daughters and his wife are dead in there. Every time I say massacre time, by the way, I always think of Peter Parker and Spider-Man 2 just going pizza time, but just him saying massacre time. Every time it goes through my head.
The widescreen compositions in this movie they're the kind of moments where you go, oh, it's painterly, and they definitely are. You get these wide Western painting compositions, but also for the motion and the blocking. moving through space. Really incredible. And then back to the windows. I love Fulci's use of the zoom lens throughout all of his films that I've seen. And this is one of the ones where I really love the zoom. And there are a couple of places where we framed very wide through a window and then we're zooming in to frame it closer in the window. That is really exciting and also beautiful, efficient storytelling. And the movie also has zooms matched to aggressive music cues at various points. You get some of the best smash zooms or crash zooms in the business here.
Yeah, I absolutely love the composition of those two little girls, and they're basically on top of each other. And then you've got the knife, fork, and spoon over on the left-hand side of the frame, and they're on the right-hand side. And then you're talking about like the zoom. I love how we've got the wife in that scene, and the camera pans over and we see the Mexican guy in the window, and then we zoom in on him. And I was just like, oh, that's nice. That's really nice. And he's just kind of this specter of death. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like the movies where it's just like, okay, we're not going to kill you, but we're going to kill everybody that you know until you finally get the message and leave town.
Definitely, that's why this whole aspect feels very mafia-like, rather than, it's got, as you said, it's like the cattle, but it is like the settlers versus the ranchers and Shane or something like that. But that's not what's happening here. I think this is coming from a different place, even though it's using that same trope.
Can I just say again how much I love Castelnuovo in this film, and just what a wonderful job he's doing. I had the chance to interview him years and years ago. Super nice guy. I talked with him about Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and it's funny just how charming he is in that movie. And then you see him here and you're just like, he's a handsome son of a bitch, but he is the most creepy guy I've ever seen in my life. And I love the white suit that he wears through this whole thing, and that he wears that white suit. And it's almost like you're saying, Spencer, the whole thing of the big rich people party that's going on. Everybody there is dressed in white. It's almost like they caught up with him. Like he's the one who's always going to be dressed like it's, racing day at some big event like My Fair Lady type of thing. But, he's always dressed to the nines, and everybody else finally catches up with him and they start wearing their finery, around him kind of thing. Also, I love the, what's that meme? Is it Arthur where you see the clenched fists, that how angry he is? And I love you get that same thing here with the dad before he starts playing the organ. You see those fists clench, and then he comes over and starts playing with his son. And it's just like, oh man, this is so good and so creepy, the way that the son just controls his father. There's no women in this movie other than Mercedes and then like a couple prostitutes. It's like so much of this is all just male dominated stuff. No mothers for Junior and Mr. Scott. No, the wife is out of the picture. We don't know like where he could have just sprung out of like mud or something. And then like no father for the Corbett brothers.
I know Nino Castelnuovo from one of my favorite Jolly, Strip Nude for Your Killer, in which he's a very sleazy photographer. So sleazy. Yeah. But I don't know, kind of charming. I like him in that. Yeah, he carries it off. A great film, that one. And yeah, he's a really good actor. Need to see him in what I haven't seen. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. I have to watch that one.
I don't know. Don't watch it if you're in a good mood, because it will squash that right away. That movie makes me cry like nobody's business.
The white costumes are also another element of absurdity in the film, because here they are in the desert and the white is all immaculate and there's no dust, the cuffs of the pants. This is really not that you wouldn't wear white in the desert, but all the white is immaculate on all the characters while they're watching it. And that also plays nicely against the depravity of everything.
You can't wear white shoes after Labor Day.
That's not true anymore.
Yes, it is. Didn't your mother ever tell you? Now you know.
Castelnuovo is inhabiting a character, and he's using this is, again, something all good actors do, but it's notable because our eyes are drawn to the costume in this way. He is using the costume. in the way that he moves and in his postures. And then Fulci is there with his crew to make sure that costume never has a blemish, no matter the situation, no matter the violence.
I was wondering, I love the absurdity of this, where all these guests come from. They're in the middle of New Mexico.
They don't live in the town. We didn't see them before.
They must have come a hell of a long way for this party.
They flew in.
Yeah, and we have to talk about this party scene and just how strange this thing is, man. Oh man, oh man. Just the way that Franco Nero comes in and you get some guests that are just like, oh, look at this guy, you know, like back of the hand kind of thing. Like, oh, what a disgusting creature this is. Like kind of this, you know, like bringing in the, the sideshow freak to kind of show off for the rich and famous type of thing. And there's Junior outside with the organ outside playing it. And he's got his little buddy and everything. And you've got the one black servant going around serving up drinks and all that. And then to have this whipping scene, and the whipping goes on for so long. And that is Junior's weapon of choice, is a whip. And it even tries to give Tom another whip. I thought for sure like he was going to do a double whip thing, but then he's like, no, you know, I'm playing fair, quote unquote, going to throw this whip over to this guy. Never going to really get a chance to use it. Really never gets the upper hand on Junior at all during this fight. And it just becomes this, you know, we've talked about this before especially in spaghetti westerns, but in a lot of action films, you have that moment where the hero has been completely defeated and now has to build himself back up, you know, be it, one of the best movies ever, Steven Seagal in Hard to Kill, where he has to like learn how to, you know, fight again, or, you know, Chow Yun-Fat when he has to learn how to shoot again in Full Contact, those kind of things. Or, you know, I guess even like maybe say like a Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars, where he gets the shit kicked out of him and then he has to learn how to shoot again and comes up with the idea of the bulletproof vest type of thing. But here, it's less of the recovery. He seems to recover pretty quickly, and it's more of the example to his brother. And then, like I said, Mercedes being killed is what really motivates the brother for them to become like this ass-kicking duo, which is the thing, you know, you mentioned like some of the Polizio Tecci and stuff. I love that moment where the guys who really haven't been fighting together suddenly realize that they have to join up. It's that like,
come on guys, it's the third act. We've only got 20 minutes to wrap this up. Let's join forces.
It's that moment when Bud White and Ed Exley team up in LA Confidential, where it's just like, okay, we have to kick ass now. We're like, like the two cops in Beverly Hills Cop realize that they have to join up with Axel Foley if they really want to take down the man.
Always satisfying. Franco Nero was big, I think, on this kind of suffering Jesus type hero as well. I mean, that started in Django as well, of course, when his hands are so messed up, he has to use the tombstone as to trigger his gun as well. But also in a later film of Franco, one of the very latest real spaghetti westerns, Kilma, which is a great film if you haven't seen that. And it's got pretty much the same plot as this. And in fact, there's even an alcoholic. Is that Woody Strode in that? I don't think it is Woody Strode, but he's got a former retainer as well who helps him out and kicks the bottle. But in that one, all his brothers have joined the local bad boss as well. But again, I think Kilma gets crucified in that one.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So, yeah, certainly something that Franco Nero really kind of made part of his kind of star persona, that suffering and then bringing himself back.
Well, you mentioned how Django is like 6 months before this, and it's amazing to see the influence of Django even on this film. Like the outfit that he wears with the black and the black just is so Django, and it's like, okay, you know.
And yeah, apparently he got this, there was someone, I think George Martin, not the Beatles producer, another one, who was supposed to have the role, but they saw a production still of Django and went, let's get that guy. He looks good. But obviously some bits, it must have been filmed after the film came out, because it does seem quite a heavy influence. And there was another one, Adios Texas, I think, which Franco Nero made again very soon after Django, which had a lot of the same kind of plot points in it.
I think I read that this film was retitled as a Django sequel in some markets, which is not unusual for exploitation or for Italy. Kind of play fast and loose with stuff. But I do really love the way that his face remains marked for the rest of the movie. I mean, they're not, for the timeline, they're not realistic scars. But on the other hand, just seeing him go around at the end, he's got these stripes left on his face from the whip. It's really great for this final vengeance sequence.
There's some continuity insofar as the guy that Jeff puts his cigar out on his face. I love that. Absolutely love that. But then it's interesting, and I maybe I'm just screwing up the timeline, but like Tom and Jeff are in town, and Tom's trying to find out like where Scott lives, and he's talking with the prostitutes and the bartender in there, and they make a big deal. They show one of the prostitutes pretty often and gives her some close-ups and everything, but she's also at the party. Like, they leave from town, and I thought they went directly to the party. Like, obviously they have to fight their way through all the bad guys as they go along, but she's also at the party. And I'm just like, okay, I don't care about the continuity, but I found it interesting that these aren't really some high society people. They're the local prostitute, and who knows how many of the other women from the saloon are there at this party, or maybe they're just kind of the party favors, you know, like, oh yeah, gentlemen, you know, like you can come in and have your way with any of these nicely dressed women.
I'd like to begin the presentation, but first, the whores!
Yeah, or they didn't have a lot of women on set, so.
Right.
That's very true, yeah.
But the implication paints a picture.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today.
Yeah, somehow I didn't catch that, but it makes me think about another. Yeah, again, back to the use of the background characters for really suggesting world and character through their placement.
I love that bit. You mentioned that bit when he goes and tries to find information about where Scott is. And he says, well, he owns this saloon, doesn't he? And the bartender says, what saloon? This guy is getting nothing here.
I don't know. I reference LA Confidential way too much, but one of my favorite moments in that movie is when either Bud White or Ed Exley, Guy Pearce, or Russell Crowe throw a gun from one to the other kind of thing. And there's a very similar moment in this film too, where they're just going through taking care of all of these bad guys. And I love this whole thing. Every time he's about to shoot, the George Hilton character, Jeff, goes, hey, gentlemen, and then like, we'll take him out. And it's so fun. I just love that. And like, there's a moment where he says, hey, gentlemen, and Nero's like, whoa, you know, like we want to talk to these guys. Don't kill these guys yet. You know, we'll get there. And that also then mirrors the last shot of the film where after the bad guys have been dispatched, all of these, it's very John Woo, Astor Jr. falls into this thing, all of these pigeons and birds come out. Jeff almost goes to shoot one, and then Tom's like, no, puts the gun down, like, okay, we're done with violence now. This is the last time that we'll be shooting people.
And that dove looks like it has blood on it. And that's our freeze frame for the very last shot. I have to think that John Woo saw this movie and said, hold my beer.
I can get more doves and more gunplay.
Yeah, because I mean, it's very similar to the end of The Killer, where they're at that church, at that mission, you know, and here you've got somewhat similar as far as this abandoned building that they're in, which I think is one of the buildings from as they're going out to the Scott property. They've got the, you know, the different stations along the way, and I think this is one of those.
When you mentioned the, hey, gentlemen, and then shooting the guys, I loved the one where they're at the top of the stairs and they roll down. And then this sets up later for Junior to have to step on his dead henchman in order to get up the stairs. That's really what this movie is about.
You mentioned this before, a great use of space, and you know where things are, which is great because you can tell there's not a lot of maybe complicated sets at the end, but he still managed to shoot it in a way where you know where they are, where they're coming from, what the plan is. It's never confusing in that way. Other things are confusing, but that's not confusing.
Well, there's some really great things, like when he rolls the wagon down and is shooting from the wagon and then does that amazing, like, double flip off of the wagon.
Again, back to cartoonish. It's ridiculous. I love that stuff. And again, into the use of space, Fulci and I'm forgetting the name of the DP, they're constantly setting things up to make a simple cut from the master to a close-up be as big an impact, like a punch to the audience as possible. Really beautiful cuts to a close-up that are just at the right opposing angle to where the camera was in the master, or even just the shot that set up the scene, that we get these really beautiful, intense cuts that push us through the movie.
Yeah, and I think some of that is the DP, like you said, Riccardo Palottini, I believe is how you would say it, and then also the editor.
Thank you. I have a terrible fear of mispronouncing, which drives a lot of my not mentioning names when I'm on. I really apologize.
No worries. And then the editor, Ornella Micheli, had done a bunch of stuff as well, including Don't Torture a Duckling, which is, holy shit, that movie. Yeah.
I love that movie. I love it.
So good. And yeah, another just Fulci classic. That one, I believe, is one of the few that I've seen of his. No, I definitely need to see more of his stuff. I almost need like a little bit of a primer to be like, okay, you're going to want to go here next and you want to go here. I mean, I wouldn't even mind checking out some of the comedies. The thing that everybody says is, oh, they don't translate. But I watch a lot of comedies from foreign languages and I'm just like, yeah, no, like I imagine some of this is funnier, like, you know, watching an Indian comedy or a French comedy or something. I'm like, I imagine some of this is funnier in the original language, but some of it just is universal.
I can recommend a Fulci comedy if you want, and it's a later one, actually. 1976, My Sister-in-Law with Edwidge Fenech. That's actually, it made me laugh. I like that one. She plays twin roles. She plays...
I'll watch anything with her in it.
A woman of loose virtues and her judge sister as well.
Nice.
My sister-in-law, because she's in the law.
I see what you did there. That's nice.
I want to see the musicals as well now, because I don't see much of a musical connection or influence in the, in the horror films, but actually in the staging of the action here, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is a guy who's directed musicals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Understanding of how to use space and what's going on where. And yeah, love it.
Exactly. And I'm not big on musicals either, but this Western has convinced me. I got to go in for the Fulci musicals now.
Incidentally, I'm really surprised Fulci didn't make any of the Peplum films in the early to mid 60s, the Sword and Sandal ones, or even like pirate kind of films, which were made around the same time. That's an opportunity to have crucifixion in your film, and he just passed it by.
He'll work it in other ways. Don't worry. Yeah, he's got like the pilot whipping Jesus scene in this one. He's got the crucifixion, very, very old school with these torture techniques. I love it.
Mike, of the horror films, I'm gonna highly recommend The Beyond as a place to start.
Oh, we did cover that.
Covered that one. Okay.
We covered that years ago.
I love The Beyond.
I love The Beyond.
Yes. It's so good. And I just love the surrealism of it.
The absurdity and excess of so many of the horror sequences where they're like just breathtakingly slow. They just take forever. But that's part of the pleasure of it is, it doesn't make any sense in terms of how things would happen or the reaction of the characters or anything like that. But nevertheless, it's just amazing the way that these things get slowed down and keep going on and on.
Yeah, it is. The first time I watched that, I think I wrote a review for it saying, okay, it's not the best film in the world, but it's probably top 5.
Yeah, exactly. No, The Beyond is one of those, it's a great film, but it's in a certain kind of category. Again, the trashiness is one of those things where I guess I understand why Fulci isn't taken more seriously, but then I feel like the people that don't take Fulci seriously, I don't have to take very seriously. The trashiness is there, but that is, as I said earlier, feature, not a bug. But on top of that, if you cannot encounter these trashy movies without appreciating the craft of the trash, how much do you really love cinema becomes a question for me. And increasingly, as I watch and rewatch Fulci movies, I'm just always more impressed. I know my third watch of Massacre Time is going to be one of my favorite things that happens to me in the next year or so. As I know I'm going to watch it a couple of more times, in the next several months. And that's just usually the case, with any of his stuff. Talk about trashy. Zombie is extremely trashy. And that's one where, you can tell that he doesn't have as good a schedule and budget as on a movie like Massacre Time. And yet there is just, real cinematic beauty in setting up, the eye splinter scene.
And it's a film that took me a little while maybe to come round to. The first couple of times I saw it, I was thinking, okay, it's good fun. There's a zombie fighting a shark, but it's not great. And then now I absolutely adore it. I think it's amazing. It's just real. It's just pure craft. It's great.
And then even the zombie fighting the shark, which is pretty ramshackle as a sequence, it does really work. And it's a funny thing. I've actually taught that scene in classes to teach about the creation of space through editing, because you never get all three elements. You never get the girl and the zombie and the shark all in the same shot. You get two at a time, but the way that it's put together, well, it's deceptively ramshackle, because the first couple of times that I watched it, I was convinced that like all three of these had come together within the same shot, and they don't. It's all about scheduling of the shark, scheduling of the zombie, all this kind of stuff.
There's your psycho influence again. Does the knife ever enter into Marion Crane? No, but it sure looks like it.
There's definitely stuff that's fast and loose, but it's fast and loose by someone who has real control and really beautiful sense of timing. Another thing that this movie is particularly great at is duration. The duration of shots that punctuate these scenes. Franco Nero staggering away in close-up for a really long tracking shot really puts a fine point on everything in the movie we've been watching up until that moment. And that's far from the only instance of that. Fulci really has a great sense of exactly how long a shot should be and everything that it needs to contain.
It's funny that this movie is about brothers, and then that you find out the switch later on, that Tom and Jeff aren't actually brothers, but Tom and Jeff are the ones who fight together at the end, that it becomes basically killing the natural brother, the quote unquote natural brother, the one that came from your same father, I guess, or maybe same mother. Yeah.
I get it. So much in this film is not explained.
We don't get a flashback.
Is the implication that Scott raped their mother or not? And if nothing could be done, why doesn't Tom know the name Scott? At what point was he sent away before Scott took over the place?
All of this, the way that it works, sorry, I'm about to give a little pet theory that I like for breaking down types of cinema. This movie is not fantasy, it's dream. And it doesn't do any of the surrealist kind of dreamlike pointers of going, oh, we're inside a dream. It is simply arranged in a dreamlike way. We're not in a Lynch land where the sound design and the framings are telling us right out of the gate that we're in a kind of dream or dreamy world. It's not doing that, but the overall arrangement of how it comes together and the logic of how the characters fit within the world and fit together is ultimately without any fuss or without any of the signposting that we normally see for the dreamlight.
And that's common with pretty much not all Fulci, but pretty much, yeah.
Well, this is why I love him so much. Is like, I love plenty of fantasies, but I'm team dream. Dream is much more interesting to me than fantasy. And so, for instance, there's a world here, but in fantasy, there's a kind of sense of rickety. We like to use this term a lot these days, but has always kind of been there. Rickety kind of world building, whereas this is more world inhabiting. Yes, there is a world, and the world is populated, and the world, has buildings within it. But this is ultimately a thing that we are, as audience, asked to inhabit rather than to peer down from a map and get an arrangement and get exposition about here's the world, here's how it's built, here's the lore, here's the mythology. This is not a movie with mythology. It is simply a myth. It's a freestanding myth.
I believe I read an article where it was talking about how Junior doesn't even seem like it feels like he's jealous of Tom, the attention that Tom's getting, more like a jealous lover than a son, or even, I know for sure what motivates him in theory is the idea of inheritance, and maybe Tom's the firstborn son, maybe there's primogeniture, I don't know, but yeah, just this whole like, this is my daddy and no other person can have him, kind of going back to that incest thing where it's just like, okay, this is a weird relationship that we have. And just, again, he's got the power over his dad. It's very telling that he's the first character introduced, that we don't even see Mr. Scott until when they're first in town and come riding in. And we've already met Junior. We already know, like, okay, yeah, he's a bad dude. And we don't know what the peasant has done to deserve this, to be hunted at the beginning.
I've heard some people speculate that is the father, Jeff's father, at least. But who knows?
Interesting. So it's almost like a flashback kind of thing. Or just like that's the motivation.
Yeah. But we don't know how far in the past the fathers died. We don't know when the mothers died.
Right.
All this is a mystery.
Yeah, which I'm fine with. I don't need everything to be explained to me. And yeah, like I mentioned, we don't have a flashback of what happened with the whole family thing. I'm okay that it's just a broken family.
Yeah. No, let's just walk in and live in it.
Yeah. And it's quite unusual, I think, in a film like this, which really does have quite a lot of plot, that there isn't any flashbacks. Fulci would not be a stranger to flashbacks in a lot of other films, but in this one, it's just all still told straightforward.
Well, that's the screenwriting rule, I think, is you tell and you don't show.
One of the crazy disjunctions is at the end. We leave Franco Nero hanging by one arm off of this bridge as Junior falls to his death, and doves falls to his death, and then doves take off. And then we return to the bridge, and Franco Nero is gone, and we wonder, did he fall? And then no, he just appears in a kind of close two-shot with Jeff for the end of the movie. And some people might find that kind of cheat unforgivable, especially at the end of a movie. But to me, it's actually all of a piece. It's, again, one of those gaps that Fulci creates. And I think this is a very intentional gap, that he's intentionally messing with us and messing with space here. But it is of a piece with all the other kind of lacunae that we have in plot and in space throughout the film.
The biggest one for me is the shooting of Jason Scott, the father, as well. Do you see Junior in that? Because I'm sure I missed him popping up in the background. He is not in the scene, but the implication is he has just popped up from behind a rock, shot his own father, and then run off. Because even Tom is convinced that Jeff has shot him. Jeff goes and starts beating up Jeff for shooting him.
I'm going to beat up on Hitchcock just a little bit here, and he can take it. The Hitchcock theory that surprise is no good and cinema is all about suspense. You can't use surprise everywhere, but in a movie like this is a good example of where you can have a tension between suspense and surprise, and you can have these absurd moments of a character who has not been in the background suddenly shooting somebody. And yeah, I know that there are a lot of people that go, that's Deus Ex Machina or whatever, but I don't know. There's so many incidents in the real world. This is dreamlike kind of thing, and I'm going to make my claim on the basis of dream, but also in the real world, people are freaking surprised by the car wrecks that they get into. People never know that they're about to die when a calamity occurs. The Hitchcock line about, no, you always want to set things up in a way where the audience is worried about the character. Sure, yeah, whatever, 90% of the time, but there's a 10% that is actually I just got to call bullshit on this as a totalizing theory. And that feels to me like a lot of rule following screenwriting and visual construction unnecessarily prizes this view of foreseeing everything over an experience in cinema where we can be jolted. Characters who have been in the movie the whole time can suddenly appear, where somebody can be shot totally out of the blue.
I'm reminded of, what's it called? L.A. Confidential.
Yeah.
And James Cromwell turned around. One of the best scenes, yeah.
No, and this is done occasionally. It's not that this is a totally unknown technique to pop up in different movies, but again, the pervasiveness of it here is actually something that I don't think is just sloppy writing or anything. It is part of the chaotic and sadistic world that this story takes place in.
Well, if memory serves, doesn't Tom then think that Jeff killed the father, and he starts beating him up about it? And it's just like, no.
Jeff has to open up buttons in his gun. They're not called buttons, bullets. That's what you call them. And shows that he's not fired one. Yeah.
And I love that. I love it, especially as it's a kind of a callback to like that fetishization of the gun that we had when we first are introduced to Franco Nero. And he like is lovingly touching his old black leather saddle, and then like gets out the oil and starts like cleaning up the gun and everything and putting the bullets in those nice close-ups. It's so funny because like I was trying to find a good trailer for this movie, and the trailer, I can't find one with like the typical voiceover, which I love to use for the show, where it's like, meet Tom Corbett kind of thing. But instead it's the whipping. Like that's how the trailer starts off, is like whip stuff across the screen, and then the whipping scene. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff with the gun and all this. And then of course the music comes in. I don't know I can't remember if there's any dialogue in that trailer at all. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be confusing when people just hear this, because without the visuals. But yeah, it was funny that those were some of the big moments that they used in the trailer, was the whipping and then the gun loading.
So I think from the posters, you can tell they found this film quite hard to market and how to sell it. There was an American title, AIP, put on it, The Brute and the Beast. Doesn't really make sense, but of course it came out. Did it come out? I think it came out the same year as Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I think you're right. Yeah. So it's kind of playing on that. Yeah.
Playing on that is the height, the Euro Western, this really 66. And then it was a Colt concerto in Britain. No idea what that means. And then I think it was West Germany and Denmark. It was the Django. It was a Django film, basically. But yeah, they were definitely trying to market it as nasty, spaghetti western, cruelty, whips, that kind of thing.
I'm going to jump back to the killing of Scott, because I think this is psychologically and mythically a really interesting moment. And again, the use of the surprise factor for Junior killing his own father. Effectively, we have these three brothers within the dream mythology of the thing. And two of them, in a way, the moment that the father is killed is the moment that he's accepting a new son, and Junior then is being deposed in a way. And this motivating the killing of the father, and then one brother attacking the other in thinking that Jeff has killed the father. This is a really nice little psychological triangle around the killing the father mythology. Really great kind of moment. And again, back to the idea for why do you employ a surprise like this? It's precisely because of that. It plays into the psychology of blaming Jeff in that moment by not setting it up more obviously, and that it's a surprise. We can better believe and tap into the psychology of Tom as he attacks his brother.
One of the most important lines is from Jeff, and he says, "The Scots killed my father." That's the signifier that Tom is not from the same father, but also saying the Scots. He's not saying it was Junior Scott. He wasn't saying it was Jason Scott. So that's kind of left in the dark there. It's just the Scots. And we're going to presume it's Junior and not the father. It turns out it's not really the villain.
Though I'm curious how much he had a hand in this stuff, because I'm sure, obviously he knows his son is crazy and all he does is kind of help him out and set him up for success,
Son's probably pretty good for knocking off his enemies, competitors, keep the local control. But it's also interesting the way that the father is killed off so quickly, which is in its own way a surprise. In the structure of this, I know for sure that the final boss is going to be Junior. I know that from the very beginning of the movie. There's no question. But there's a part of me that's expecting that the father is going to enter into the violence at some point. That, like our mafia godfather is going to step into the violence at this point in the film, and he doesn't, and he's killed off before that can happen. And again, that's a wonderful kind of surprise.
I was a little disappointed about how fast he's killed off. And I think the fact it was a surprise, I wanted to be part of the big showdown at the end, rather than really just triggering the big showdown. Yeah, because I think there was a little bit more to be eked out of that weird relationship between Junior and his father.
While I was doing my research for this one, I kept running across people talking about the comparisons between this and Django Unchained. And I have to admit that I have successfully driven most of Django Unchained out of my head, other than the most important scene of the film, which was Quentin Tarantino being an Australian.
Yeah. So I remember that bit.
Yeah, everybody's got to remember that, right? So I don't know, I could see some parallels between Junior and what's his name, Calvin Candy, the Leonardo DiCaprio character. But again, what I mostly remember of him was the phrenology speech that he gives. So I guess there's a lot of visual parallels between the two films, which doesn't really surprise me at all.
I'm trying to remember, is there a scene like The Hunting of a Man in Django? Because I have a feeling that there is.
Yeah, no, there's a guy who's torn up by dogs. Unpopular opinion in this room. I like Django Unchained, but for...
Oh, I like it too. I like it a lot, but it's just been a while.
Australian Quentin Tarantino, I can do
without. That's the best part of the movie.
There's a tremendously upsetting whipping scene in Django Unchained that I have to think works differently, and it works differently visually, but I have to think is at least influenced by the big whipping scene here. There's also a number of instances of kind of cartoonish violence. When people get shot, they don't just get shot. They're pulled by wires, for big falls and that kind of thing. That definitely, it struck me that Tarantino is influenced by this movie and Django Unchained. And I think Tarantino's work is tremendously influenced by Don't Torture a Duckling as well. The first time I saw that, I was like, oh, right. Yeah, this is clearly one that Tarantino has watched closely or at minimum remembered very well. So I think Fulci is an important source for Tarantino, even though he more often cites Corbucci.
But I think certainly if he watched Massacre Time, just from reading his book, he would have definitely been struck by how much this is like a southern plantation, but they're not racist. It's not a plantation. And he wanted to kind of put that back in, which is obviously the idea for Django as well. And I think quite a lot of his ideas of the Western as well. He wants to put the race back into it.
Well, you also always have to be careful which directors Tarantino is lauding, because it's not those that he's pulling the most from. It's the ones that he won't talk about. So I know he's mentioned Fulci in the past, but yeah, for him to be like, oh yeah, Corbucci, yeah. It's like, okay, well, look past that and you're going to find who he's really taking stuff from. Yeah. Oh, I love John Woo. Yeah. What about Ringo Lam? Yeah, I definitely want to see the rest of these Fulci Westerns. I think that I tried watching For the Apocalypse years and years ago. This would have been probably 30 years ago. And I think that was when it was first being released by Anchor Video, I'm going to say.
I think it might be Arrow.
Well, this is like old school. This is like, yeah, maybe back when it was like a big deal that these movies were getting released on any format whatsoever. Back when it was like more of a, well, if you can't find it through video search in Miami, you're out of luck type of thing. So yeah, I definitely want to watch that, especially because that was based on Outcasts of Poker Flats, if memory serves. So,
oh, I think it was. I think it's based off a couple of short stories. I think by the same author.
So definitely want to check out that one. And then what was his other one? The Silver Saddle?
Silver Saddle, which is even later, 78. Goodness. That's Juliana Gemma. Nobody's making spaghetti westerns in 78.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it's strange how he will go back to those because, like you said, he hadn't made a Western before this. He had made the Peplum stuff before this. It was interesting that he's more like the musical comedy guy and then comes into this and then eventually gets into like the gialli and the horror films. And yeah, just occasionally we'll dip back into the Western genre. So it's like, okay, well, if it's that interesting, let's see what he had to say.
As I said, For the Apocalypse, I really like it, but it's definitely like a 70s spaghetti western. It's got like that kind of hippie, almost Charles Manson aspect, killer hippie aspect of it as well. And yeah, you've seen Kioma as well. That'd be the other one I would definitely recommend in this kind of vein. Fulci also did White Fang, the Jack London book, and a sequel with Franco Nero, 72, 73 as well. So I don't know if that counts as a western, maybe a northern. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I definitely remember seeing some stills from that in the Stephen Thrower book, which is a great resource for Fulci stuff. Yeah.
What struck me is just how fully formed Fulci is coming into this as an accomplished director, and a director that loves cruelty, sadism, dysfunctional families. Keys comes into this fully formed in his first nasty film, his first real Fulci film. But also how much this got classical Western ideas in this as well as the Euro-Western as well. It's not as stereotypically Euro-Western as a Leone or something like that. Feels quite classical, and it feels almost like John Ford, some of the direction as well, but with definitely a weird Fulci spin on it. So yeah, fascinating. Really glad that we watched this.
A visual feast, like all Fulci movies, but I think, again, this is one where a longer schedule really pays off in terms of the visual storytelling. And it isn't just clarity. It's like some of the difficulty of getting these shots that are really beautiful, tell the story well and efficiently, and sort of create a beautiful foreground, middle ground, background of, this dream.
All right, gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
Matt from Viva again.
And Emily, looking for something superior to streaming? A place with more than 10 times the selection available on literally all of the streaming services combined?
Check out Scarecrow Video's rent-by-mail service. Select from an unparalleled collection of over 155,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door.
Get in on it now at scarecrowvideo.org and rediscover the wonders of physical media.
If they move, kill them. Faster.
I'd like to say a few words for the dear dead departed.
Well, he had guts. Well, why don't you answer me, you damn yellow-livered trash?
He played his string right out to the end.
He's there. I don't think he looks worth so much. La próxima vez que nos encontremos, le voy a bajar toda la madre. Listas, desgraciados. Let's go. Why not? Oh, my, what a fun. We're finished. All of us. We share very few sentiments with our government.
That's right. We'll be back next week with a look at a fairly obscure Western. I think it's called The Wild Bunch. Anyway, before I go, I want to thank my co-hosts Spencer and Joe. So Spencer, what's the latest with you, sir?
Oh, it's the end of the school year. I got lots to do as we march toward graduation. So that's my life right now.
And Joe, how about yourself?
Yeah, still plugging on with the Caliber 9 from Outer Space podcast with Rob. We do a double bill each week, have a guest on, and just have a great time every single week. We had you on recently. That was great to have you. We talked about Across 110th Street and Gambling City, the Sergio Martino and Poliziottesco. Quite an unusual one, but a good one. I liked it.
That was a lot of fun, and I always appreciate whenever you guys have me on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, check us out everywhere. We're all the podcast places.
Well, thank you again, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They're all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world.
You left to find a pot of gold. 1,000 miles you rode alone, all alone, the long alleyway, will lead you anywhere. You'll come back home someday. You'll come back home someday. The wind will steal your pot of gold and fill your eyes with burning sand, bitter sand. No star will show the way, and no one will hear your prayer. You'll come back home someday. You'll come back home someday. You went away forever. You went away alone. But someone's always waiting for you at home today. No star will show the way, and no one will hear your prayer. You'll come back home someday. You'll come back home someday. You went away forever. You went away alone. But someone's always waiting for you at home today.